and players smiling.
But Michael Jordan is not only the best basketball player, but he's the most exciting basketball player to ever play.
Tatum fires away, pumps it in, 51 for Jason Tatum.
The Big Three NBA podcast is powered by Prizepicks.
Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Big Three NBA podcast for Sherrod Blakely, Gary Washburn. I'm Kwani, Lunis. And now we come to you officially at the end of the full NBA season with a new champion being crowned. But before we get into that, we do want to remind you, give a quick shout out to actually one of our sponsors, Prizepicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. And also to remind you that if you're listening to the Big Three podcast, it's part of the CLNS Media Network, which is where you can find our episodes past and present, as well as other great Celtics content. So if you're into the Boston Celtics and all things, including that team, CLNS, the Media Network, has you fully covered. How are you two feeling about the new NBA champion, the OKC Thunder?
You know what? They handled their business. And they obviously not having Tyrese Halliburton certainly hurt the Pacers, but regardless, this is kind of how the season should have ended. I mean, they were the best team during the regular season. They had some serious adversity they had to fight through during the playoffs. And ultimately, they're the last team standing. And, you know, the official defense of their NBA crown begins today. And make no mistake about it, there will be teams coming for that head. Just like a year ago this time, teams were coming for the Celtics. So I don't know how they're going to handle that because that'll be another new experience. But as we've seen with Boston, and frankly, we've seen throughout the NBA, defending that NBA crown is much easier said than done. I believe the last 6 champions were unable to do it. And so, you know, even though a lot of signs point towards the Thunder potentially breaking that streak, it's not a given that they'll be able to do it. So.
Yeah, I mean, kind of a marred Game 7 with the Halliburton injury. You wanted to see both teams at full strength go at it, and it looked like Indiana was ready to really give them a good game, and they did. They led at halftime, then just kind of fell apart in the third quarter and didn't have anything left. Nobody else stepped up besides McConnell in that second half for Indiana. I just think it's a long time come for Oklahoma City. They've built for this thing since moving from Seattle 17 years ago, and they tried it, and they got close with KD, Russ, and Harden. It didn't work, and that was, 2012. So this has been 13 years in the making, kind of rebuilding and losing those 3 guys and building a new big 3 and all the trades they've made and all the salaries they've taken on and all the draft picks they've had. And they still got many more draft picks. So credit to Oklahoma City for, kind of being enduring the ups and downs, persevering and showing a lot of NBA teams how you don't have to be in a big market to win a championship. You just got to be well managed. So I take from this just an outstanding season from the Thunder. They're a young team, so they can run it back. But as we learned, the Celtics tried to run it back, and they got moderately close, but it didn't work. Something happened. Injuries happened. It just wasn't quite the same. So we'll see the pressure that's going to be on Oklahoma City next year with other teams in the West. Obviously, Houston. Now with KD, teams are going to ramp up. They are going to be the hunted. No more being the hunter. People are going to have Oklahoma City as their Super Bowl. So we'll see how they react. But great season, and overall, just one of those teams that just seem like a team of destiny.
Gary, I had a question for you, Gary, because I mean, you covered the Sonics back when or Oklahoma City when they were back in Seattle. What does this mean to those fans, the ones who don't have that team, but they're still technically connected to this championship run? I mean,
No.
are they excited about this, or are they just like F them? What's
They
going
were
on?
rooting harder for the Pacers than they were in Indianapolis. They cannot stand the Thunder. There was no love lost between Sonic fans and the Oklahoma City Thunder. There was nobody who took on that team and said, "Oh, that's my team. That's the Son." There was nothing, no relationship there. There's a lot of bitterness, a lot of anger from, somebody tweeted last night, Howard Schultz, who sold the team to the Oklahoma City folks, the Starbucks owner. Hey, he's going to give away free coffee at the victory parade, at the Oklahoma City victory parade. There's a lot of bitterness still there. And to be honest, and Seattle don't want to hear this, Seattle botched it just as much as Oklahoma City took the team from them Seattle botched the whole thing from the beginning. The two-year period when the team was put on sale in February 2006 to when they relocated officially in July 2008. It was botched. The city, Seattle carried itself with an arrogance that there's no way an owner would move this team to be with a bunch of Okies in Oklahoma, a bunch of tumbleweeds. They had a completely miscalculation of what Oklahoma City would be, the fan base, what it was ready for, and they handled this situation with total arrogance. So now I think that there's hope that, Seattle's going to get an expansion team, but this does not help. There's nobody in Seattle who was rooting for the Thunder last night.
Damn.
So, no love loss, anything else. It would be like the Brooklyn folks rooting for the Dodgers and all, when they won in LA. No, it's just their team was snatched away from them. They feel it was unfair. They feel, as we know, David Stern was a gangster, and the story basically was Stern went to Washington to the state capital of Olympia and met with the state legislature in order to encourage them to build a new stadium for the Sonics. And remember, David was doing kind of a tour, and he was trying to get a new stadium in Milwaukee. He was trying to get a new stadium in Sacramento, and his first on his list was Seattle. And they laughed him out of that meeting. They kind of embarrassed and belittled him and said, there's no way we're going to pay a bunch of millionaires to play. And their arena currently was good enough, and it's not even a thought that they're going to build a new arena. And Stern said, okay, I got one for you then. And 3 years later, the Sonics were in Oklahoma. So David played hardball with Seattle, and they lost. So there's no love lost. Long answer to your question, Sherrod. No love lost for it's even worse to see their team win a championship or their former team.
So there won't be a Peaches and Herb moment where it's like reunited and it feels so good.
So good. No, there won't be. Shai's not going back to Seattle to get honored. It's not going to be like Marchand coming back to Boston with a Stanley Cup from Florida. Nothing like that. No, there is
no Sir Mix-a-Lot moments or anything like that.
No, Sir Mix-a-Lot's not traveling to Oklahoma to help out to perform in the parade. No Lenny Kravitz, no Jimi Hendrix, who is from Seattle, no Quincy Jones.
No love.
Nothing.
Solely Oklahoma City.
Totally Oklahoma City. And I said, people asked me what happened, and it was botched on both sides, but Seattle just completely botched that whole situation.
Well, now that we've looked at the past of, history of this franchise, what do you two say about the future, specifically this roster, and do they have the potential to become a dynasty?
Well, they're built to do it for sure. When you look at their core guys, most of them, other than Alex Caruso, are under the age of 30. And so not only that, but most of those guys are still trending towards their peak play, which is scary that they're NBA champions and so many of their guys still have lots of levels to grow as players. But, as Gary pointed out earlier, it's hard to repeat as champions. It's really, really hard. And the biggest challenge, I think, more than anything else, is just staying healthy. They did a good job of navigating the season when they were without Chet Holmgren for a really long stretch. But that was one guy. And the guy that you brought in to bolster that position simply played more than he was supposed to. So they really didn't feel the impact of not having Chet for long stretches. But when you start looking at guys outside of Chet in that top 4, top 5 core group, any one of those guys misses significant time could be a major, major factor for them not getting back. And the other thing too, not only is health important, but also timing. When you look at Indiana, if you have a major injury and it happens at the beginning of the season, that is a very different narrative that plays out versus having it happen in the playoffs. We saw that in Boston with Tatum. We saw that with Indiana with Halliburton. You can just go on and on about teams that come close but not quite get there. And often it's just not having all your weapons available when you absolutely need them, which is the playoffs. But I think they're built to certainly lead that charge to getting back to a second straight title. But I think I don't think they'll do it. I think the West is there's going to be a new champion, most likely coming out of the West. And we'll, we've got a whole summer to talk about who some of those cats are. But at this point, they're built to be back certainly in contention to win a second title, if not the absolute clear-cut favorite.
Yeah, I think the Thunder will obviously be the prohibitive favorites already in Vegas. They're going to be the favorites to repeat. They're going to bring everybody back. It's all about motivation. It's all about health, all the factors that basically the Celtics just faced. And they the Celtics almost made it. They won 3 fewer games, and they thought they got Kristaps Porzingis healthy to the finish line, and that ended up not being the case. And then Jalen ended up with that nagging knee injury, and then Jason's obviously catastrophic injury. So I think with the Thunder, you just got to wish for good luck. They have 2 first-round picks coming up. I don't know if they'll use both of them. They'll probably take a stash. They have their first-round pick this year, missed all of a kid named Topic, the point guard, missed all year with an ACL. So he's going to be coming. They could add 2, maybe even 3 rookies onto this roster this year. So they'll get younger, and then everybody will be back. So they have a chance, and you better take advantage of this window right now because Holmgren's going to need to get paid. Jalen Williams going to need to get paid. SGA, like all these guys are coming up, are going to be requesting extensions when they're third year, and the Cason Wallaces and the Aaron Wiggins and all those guys are going to get paid. Oklahoma City is not going to be able to afford those players. They're not going to go deep into the second apron. So this is their time. The coals are hot, and I think Oklahoma City has a great opportunity to repeat, but it's all about motivation, health, all the little things, the factors that we just experienced with the Celtics where you can almost do it. And then there's going to be a team, if it's Houston, if it's Denver, Minnesota, that's going to come in real hungry, right? Oklahoma City was hungry this year. There's going to be a real hungry team coming out of the West, whether it be the Lakers in their last run with maybe LeBron and Luka, the Clippers. Like, there's going to be a team that we probably don't expect that's going to be real hungry, like Indiana. Nobody would have guessed Indiana going to the finals. There's going to be another Indiana in the West. There's going to be teams that are going to come out of there, and they're going to be shooting for Oklahoma City. And I think as we saw in these finals, Oklahoma City isn't as flawless as we thought. Like Indiana, they botched game 4. If Indiana wins game 4, they win this series. And then Oklahoma City kind of checked out in game 6. So as much as, they look good, I don't, them getting taken to 7 by this Indiana team was probably an encouraging sign for a lot of other teams to say, this team's beatable. Like, maybe not this year, but next year.
Mm-hmm. So we mentioned that this was the first title for Oklahoma overall, led by SGA, of course, though. But one notable thing about, obviously, him leading this team is the fact that not only did he win the regular season MVP, but, of course, he secured the finals MVP award, which hasn't been done since LeBron as well. But when you think about all the accolades that he's been able to check off this season, what do you think this says about his future, not only in OKC, but just within the league?
What do you think, Gary?
I mean, I just think his status is as the best player in the league right now. It's his league, right? This is a guy who does not have the greatest athleticism. He's not going to wow you with his dunks. He's not going to wow you with hitting 7 or 8 threes in a game. He just does everything well. He knows spacing. He knows how to get to his spots. He knows how to draw fouls, and he knows how to hit the mid-range. So he's almost, at this point, unstoppable. And I just think, he's still a very young guy at 26, still not even entering his prime. So the sky's the limit for SGA, and I just think it's been a completely eye-opening year for a lot of people who probably didn't know a lot about him or thought, oh, he's really good, right? But he's playing in Oklahoma. We'll see. And now they know he's the best player in the league. And it just leads you to kind of ponder that whole Canada Olympic team with him, Luke Dort, Jamal Murray, and how come they didn't even get to the medal round? That should be a 30 for 30 because they kept showing all those Canada, shots, him and Nickeil Alexander-Walker and all them dudes from Canada, Dylan Brooks. Canada's a hotbed, and he's the leader of that. And it's just like, damn, how come y'all didn't even get to the medal round? But with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, an amazing player, people have their issues with his being quote unquote a foul merchant, but I just think he knows it. He knows how to play, and teams are going to take from Indiana's page, maybe double him when he, makes that turn, do a little things, but the radar is on him, but he's deserved all the accolades he gets because he's a great player.
No, he's done it the way you're supposed to do it, and just simply let your basketball more than anything else do the talking for you. He's really not he's not your traditional face of the franchise, league best player type guy. In some ways similar to Tatum from a demeanor standpoint, kind of low key. Doesn't really is not necessarily a me guy, but when he gets out on the floor, it really is all about him. As Gary pointed out, he has the ability to score on all levels. 3-point shooting is probably the weakest part of his game, but he's good enough to where you have to respect that. And to me, his 3-point shooting, he seems to dial up that particular shot when he absolutely, or his team, I should say, absolutely needs that. You go back and you look at the Pacers game. I remember the first one he hit in Game 7 was a big one. It came right after Indiana hit a 3-pointer. And that's kind of the player that he is. It's going to be interesting to see how the league markets him, because he doesn't have the flamboyant, over-the-top personality of, let's say, a guy like Anthony Edwards. He doesn't play for a traditionally perennial power franchise like the Boston Celtics or even the New York Knicks. He plays for a small market team, and he's not a big guy, so you can't even build around that dynamic the way you could in San Antonio with Tim Duncan. If you didn't know Shai, who he was, and he's walking down the street, he's yet to get to the point where he is being recognized by the casuals. He's not there yet. And that, to me, is what's going to be interesting between now and next year's playoff run for them. Is he going to elevate his status to the point where he can walk down the street, he can go into, any restaurant in any city, and they're going to be like, oh, man, that's SGA. He ain't there yet. Now, in Canada, yeah, he probably is there. He's probably that guy. But he's Canadian, so that's how it should be. That's the thing that separates him from guys like LeBron, guys like Jokic. Because even Jokic now, he's at that point where he's so familiar to even the casuals that you recognize him. SGA is not quite there yet. Will he get there? We don't know. But at least you know that if he doesn't get there, it has nothing to do with his productivity or his work. It's just simply people just haven't caught on to how impressive he is and why he should be the guy that we're all focusing more of our attention on.
Okay, well, one of our favorite questions on this podcast, obviously because we're Celtics focused, what does him and that team mean to the Celtics? Obviously different conferences, but overall, what does this mean for the Celtics' future?
Well, the thing about what they've done is they have now become the standard. They have become the team that everyone is chasing off, a place that the Celtics are familiar with. But what's different about them is that their team, for the most part, was built on player development. When you look at guys that are in their core, guys that they either drafted or they traded for early in their careers, who they have spent a year or two, sometimes 3, working on developing, getting them to the point where they're able to do what they did, which is win a championship. That type of return on investment they got, in Game 7, not everyone can replicate that because that takes time. And what we've found in the NBA is folks ain't trying to waste time. Folks aren't trying to are just lack patience. You look at some of the coaches that got cut loose, forget about during the season. They got let loose right before the damn playoffs. And so there's a lack of patience, which makes replicating what OKC done very difficult because you have to be patient in order to make that happen. You also have to have a really good scouting department. They've got to nail the draft. They've got to nail free agency. And frankly, there just aren't a lot of teams that can do that. Now, the Celtics, when you look at what they've been able to do in the trade market, they've hit some major home runs. They don't win a championship unless they're able to acquire a guy like Jrue Holiday, a guy like Kristaps Porzingis. So the Celtics, I think, have the ability to put together a roster that could potentially challenge them. But again, we don't know what's going to happen with this new ownership. We don't know how much of a mandate will there be to trim payroll, especially with Tatum out all season, or most, if not all season, and Jaylen Brown coming back, not quite being 100% because of what he's going through off-season surgery-wise. So we don't really know if the Celtics will be able to put together, but we do know that based on Brad Stevens' track record, the potential for him to put together a team that could easily match or compete with OKC is very real. That's indisputable. But how does that mesh with the new ownership's mission, which I think for anyone who owns a team is to get paid? How do I make money off of this? That's going to be the conundrum that I think Brad Stevens and Celtics ownership are going to have to navigate through this offseason.
Yeah, I think the Thunder, like Sherrod said, the impact is on the Celtics is one, scouting and drafting well, using your draft picks to produce productive players. You look at, obviously Chet Holmgren, second overall pick, but Jalen Williams was selected 12th. I mean, I've mentioned that several times. That is a crapshoot pick. Like, you can get a good player at 12. You can get a bad player at 12. The Knicks,
and you can get a Romeo Langford around 12.
Exactly. I mean, the Knicks, someone mentioned, one of the Knicks writers said, hey, the Knicks took Kevin Knox over Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in that draft. And Kevin Knox is a guy who's been with 7 or 8 teams, kind of on the fringe, and we saw it. We see what SGA is doing. And SGA was taken, I think, 11th. So for the Thunder to be able to draft well and also cultivate your talent, send them to the G League, that's what the Celtics take a page from. The Baylor Shiremans. We'll see what happens with Jordan Walsh. And then you got 2 more picks, 28 and 32. You can get 2 quality players. I don't know, you can get, superstar players. You can get, impact players late in the first round. You got to scout well and send those guys to Maine and make sure that they're part of your future core, because when Jason comes back and Jalen, you're going to need youth. You're going to need cheap players. And that's why the Thunder's not all their players, Shea makes money and Jalen's going to make money and eventually Holmgren, but and Hardenstein makes $29 million, but a lot of their players, the Wallaces, the Wiggins, the other Jalen Williams, all those guys don't make a whole lot of money. And so I think the Thunder, not only for the Celtics, has taught the rest of the league, especially the smaller market teams, how to manage your roster, how to win. And sometimes you got to take an L. What I mean by that is sometimes you got to go to the lottery a couple of years in a row to make this happen. Sometimes you got to be really bad. You can't be Miami and be 8th and 9th and then play in every year and think you're going to improve, because as we saw with Miami, they have enough players to offer for Kevin Durant. He no, we don't want none of them guys, right? We don't Jaime Jaquez, and then they didn't want to give up the guy, Kalal Ware, because in Miami, when you're 8th, 9th, 10th, or the Bulls, you don't have a good enough players pretty much. Sometimes you got to go down to the depths and you got to be bad and you got to suffer a little bit. So I think the Thunder has taught people how to rise back, how to make good deals, how to get draft picks, all of that. And the Celtics can take a page because they're going to have to be more economical. They can't throw money around at free agents. They're going to have to grow their own players or figure out whether the Walshes and J.D. Davidsons and some of those guys are worth it, or it's like, hey, it's time to cut bait. Let's get some new guys in here on some 2-ways, guys who can really help us down the road, like they did with Sam Hauser. Hey, let's give Sam some time. He ended up helping them, win a championship, right? He was a part of a championship team. So we'll see how that impacts the Celtics. But I expect activity over this week, and I expect Brad Stevens has got the mind working to figure out, okay, how can I improve this team and make it competitive? Because as we know now, and I'm sure we'll discuss this, the East is wide open. Now Indiana lost its best player, so you can't pick the Pacers. You're not going to pick the Celtics. You're not going to pick the Bucks. So is it the Knicks, the Cavaliers? What about other teams are going to come up? What about the Philadelphia 76ers if they're healthy? There's teams who are, Sherrod's Pistons, the Orlando Magic, who are looking and saying, we can be Indiana next year. We can be that team that takes everybody on and whoops ass and gets to the final. So it's going to be an interesting year.
Yes, it will. Hey, before we go much further, I want to give a quick shout out to our good friends at Prizepicks. Even though the NBA season is over with, you can still make some noise through Prizepicks, which is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Again, you can still mix and match your player projections from different sports, combine them, and have a chance to you just pick more or less for your chance to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. And then with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win, again, up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prizepicks, which again is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. And how do you get in? It's real simple. You just download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. And again, that's download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game.
And by the way, for those of you that are listening to the show, we just want to ask that you subscribe to the podcast, like, and leave a review. And for those that are watching the show on CLNS, go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe to the Celtics All Access YouTube channel, where you can find our show and a lot of other great Celtics content. Also, make sure you turn on notifications so that you know the instant a new video drops. All right, let's talk a little bit more about what all of this means. We talked about what it means for Boston, but obviously we're looking ahead to the NBA draft and free agency. So off-season overall, we've talked about some of the needs that the Celtics are looking for as well, but let's just remind our audience what the focus should be this week.
Well, you got a couple things. I mean, obviously the draft is coming up, and as Gary pointed out earlier, the Celtics, they're going to have a couple of picks. Not expected to be franchise-altering selections, but guys that certainly, when you're thinking about the reality that the Celtics roster is going to look dramatically different, I think, at the start of next season, these are places where they can supplement that roster with some pretty good players. It's just a matter of what will their needs be, and that I don't think is necessarily going to be determined on draft night. A lot will depend on what players they can move. We've already seen movement throughout the NBA to get a sense of what other teams may be looking to do as far as free agency is concerned, and that's something that the Celtics are certainly aware of. Jrue Holiday again, and we've talked about him a lot. He's not a guy the Celtics want to trade, but he's the best trade chip that they have that they can part with and still keep the core group relatively competitive without him. And because of what he's been able to do throughout the course of his career, because of the impact that he's made pretty much everywhere he's been the last 5, 6, 7 years, this is a guy that you can ask for probably more than you normally would for a guy at his age and get that because of his impact. So I anticipate the Celtics will be moving on from Jrue Holiday at some point, and that could potentially lead to them having more draft capital, whether it's in this year's draft or next. But the bottom line is the Celtics, they're in the market for, frankly, replenishing their talent pool. Whether it's through the draft, whether it's through free agency, they're going to have to get younger. They're going to have to utilize whatever draft capital they have or whatever draft capital they can acquire to do that. Because as Gary pointed out earlier, they are in a situation now where they're much more, I think, paying closer attention to the bottom line, the money bottom line, and they need to have a little bit more balance. And part of that is, parting ways with some high salary players and bringing in some less salary players. It's really that simple. So look for the Celtics, I think, to be very active, between now and free agency, certainly between now and leading up to the draft, to see, whether there's some opportunities for them to do some things in this particular draft to, again, bolster that back end of their roster and maybe find a guy that could potentially play their way into their regular rotation sooner rather than later.
What do you think, Gary?
I mean, to me, I just think it's going to be it's going to be an interesting few days, and I think the draft is going to tell us a lot about what's going to happen with the Celtics. And I said we talked about not wanting to give up Jrue Holiday. They don't want to give up Jrue Holiday or Kristaps Porzingis, but they're going to have to part with somebody they don't want to part with. And I just think, but I think another level, it's probably a level of excitement, because you're going to get some new guys in here. You're going to get some fresh blood. You're going to get younger, because this team needs to get younger. They got to figure out their core with Jason and Jalen. Jalen will be 29 in October, so he's getting to that prime time. Jason's going to miss probably most of the year. But to me, the Celtics are just going to have to, like Sherrod said, like it's going to be some unpopular moves. It's going to be a tough summer. Like it's going to be an unpopular summer in terms of as much as the summer was last summer, everybody's gliding and rolling and hanging out and partying and taking the championship trophy everywhere. This one is going to be a little bit more difficult because now you're going to see basically like, somebody else do it. And the Celtics are now back to the pack, right? And they're not going to be favored. I just looked, the MVP next year odds came out, and there's no Jason Tatum on that list. And there's no Tyrese Halliburton on that list, right? Yeah. Like Tatum's going to be kind of a forgotten entity, and we're going to be following his every move. Oh, he's walking now. Oh, he was able to take a basket. Oh, he's able to jog lightly. Like that's a tough, road to hoe in terms of just kind of coming back from that Achilles. Huh?
That's just sad thinking about that.
It is because he's a guy in his prime.
The biggest news today, Jason took 3 steps. Woo.
Yeah, Jason's able to jog. Jason's able to swim. The boot is off. All these things that are just going to be just kind of step one, starting at square one and now being step 1, step 2. Oh, Jason took a couple of shots. Jason's able to run backwards. I mean, tough, right? It's going to be a tough summer in Boston. It's not going to be fun. I think it'll be excitement with like young guys, and all depends. Maybe somebody slides to him. Maybe Brad trades up. Maybe he takes a popular player. He ain't taking no Cooper Flag or nothing. Don't do that. Don't get wild and crazy on that one. But they might trade up and get somebody who's a known name or a kid who could be, I don't say the next Tatum or Brown, but a kid who could be that number 3 guy. And then there's still talent on the team. Derek White's back. We'll see what happens with Al Horford. We'll see what happens with Luke Cornett. But they still have talent enough to compete. But it's going to be a long summer in Boston in terms of rebuilding this roster.
Mm-hmm. And we mentioned how the East is anyone's game, essentially. But who are some of the threats that you two see right now? Again, we're looking towards the draft to kind of really determine that. But who are some threats?
Who you got, Gary?
I'm going to say, the team, I mean, the Knicks, I think, are still good to be reckoned with. It always depends on who they're going to hire as a coach. We'll see about that. But, they'll learn from what they went through this year, and I think they'll be back with a vengeance. Sherrod's Pistons, remember, they make another acquisition and getting Jaden Ivey back, work him into the rotation. I think they'll be competitive. I'm not as excited about the Magic yet. I like Desmond Bane, but it's to say, oh, we need shooting. We don't get one guy who can shoot. Like, you need more than one guy who can shoot, right? And they need good health too. They'll get Jalen Suggs back, Wagner, Banchero, Anthony Black, because they still need a point guard. I mean, as we saw during, you can't run Jose Pavone, a.k.a. Corey Joseph, out there. You can't run him out there. So congratulations to Josue for covering an NBA champion.
Yeah.
After his stint with the Orlando Magic, jumping to play with the Magic. Congratulations, Josue. Good job.
We root on you.
You're every man. You can't. They need a point guard. So is it Anthony Black? But I'm going to say Detroit. I'm going to say Cleveland, I think, will be back, and I think they'll learn some things. And I'm going to say the Knicks, and everybody else, we'll see. I think it's a crapshoot. It's going to be interesting. Could there be a surprise team? Could there be an Atlanta? Could there be another team, a Toronto? Obviously, I'm just throwing names out there right now. Don't say Washburn said Toronto's going to win the East. No, but could there be a surprise team? Yeah. Exactly. Thanks, Sherrod. Is there going to be a team that's going to come out of nowhere like Indiana did? Indiana made the conference finals, but no one picked them to get back. No one picked them to go to the finals. They finished 4th in the East. They were the 4th seed. I think that's given a lot of teams hope that they can make it out of the East. And I said, don't forget about Philadelphia. I know they've been the laughing stock for the last couple of years. It's failed, but now everybody should be healthy. They'll get Jared McCain back. Remember the young rookie who got off to a great start and then tore his knee up. Tyrese Maxey. So look out for maybe even Philadelphia, even though that might be hard to hear for Celtic fans.
Well, Gary, I know you mentioned that you are, you're not necessarily feeling the Orlando Magic, and I am. I'm all in on them because I do think one guy can't be a difference, but he can be a difference to all four guys that he plays with. Desmond Bane, on a bad year, is a 38% three-point shooter. On a bad year, the metric that we determine as far as being a good three-point shooter is 40%, and he's just 2 percentage points below that in his worst state. That is going to create so many opportunities for those around him. His role is going to be not only to knock down shots, but just to be a presence and make teams fear him. It's one thing to be able to knock down shots, but it's an even greater thing when the fear of you knocking down shots forces teams to do some things they don't want to necessarily do. And I think health is going to be the biggest issue for Orlando. If that team is healthy, well, first of all, this past season, if health wasn't such a major issue for them, they're probably top 3, top 4 seed in the East. And if they're able to keep this team relatively healthy and you add a guy like Desmond Bane, you're probably top 2, top 3 team in the East. And remember, this team's defense, when they're locked in, is pretty damn scary. They have elite defenders in lots of positions. They have guys who play with a little bit of an edge, a little bit of grind when they're healthy. I'm thinking about Suggs and those types. They've got, to me, a wild card of all wild cards when you talk about my man from Florida State.
Jonathan Isaac.
Isaac is the guy that could be the difference between them getting to the conference finals and getting bounced in the first round. His size, his length, his versatility. If they can ever get to the point where they can count on him for 25-ish minutes a game, they become a major, major threat. And other teams that Gary mentioned, the Knicks, they're going to be in the mix for sure. And Philly, I'm not worried about Philly. I just think that if there's a way things can go wrong, Philly's going to find that path. They're just going. It could be health. It could be injury. It could be, coaching. They're going to find a way to not be great. That's just who they are. Sad but real. As you mentioned, Gary, the Detroit Pistons, I'm telling you right now.
Oh, boy.
If I am Detroit Pistons, I am probably a good shooter away from getting to the conference finals or further. And me and my son Isaiah, we were having this conversation on this morning. And this may sound crazy, Gary, but if I'm Detroit, I might want to kick around the tires on a guy like Bradley Beal. As a number 1 option, I want no part of him. As my number 3, a la Ray Allen role when they won a title in Boston, as my number 3 guy that kind of hang out in the corner and knock down shots and just basically play off of others and not necessarily you create your own offense because that's not you. I think about it. I wouldn't necessarily do it, but I would absolutely give it some thought because they do need another guy who can get buckets. Now, do you want to pay that price tag? No, that's an issue. That is a definite issue. But to me, those are the conversations if you're the Detroit Pistons and you're seriously thinking about what do we need to do to get over the hump and get to the conference finals or NBA finals. Those are the conversations you need to start having. And if you decide that price tag is too damn high, I get it. I totally get it. But the conversation needs to be had is my point.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Remember, Sherrod, Bradley Beal is making $110 million over the next 2 years.
2-year deal. I know, Gary.
And so you got to trade for him. And who are you trading to fit that salary?
That's the problem.
That's the thing. He's almost impossible to acquire because you got to literally send your two top. You'd have to do, send him sign and trade, like send him Tobias Harris, and
you make that sound like that's like a deal breaker, Gary.
No, you would have to send them right now. You'd have to send them Tobias Harris, Jaden Ivey. Like you'd have to send them 3 or 4 guys. Isaiah Stewart, maybe. Like you would have to
Those
send
are the
them,
3.
like, yeah. Like, are you willing to gut 3-year guys? And I'm not saying Harris is a great player, but That's a lot for a dude who can't stay healthy and is just taking a real decline in his career. But
It is.
Go ahead. You do you, Sherrod. Go ahead and make that move.
Let me be clear. That is a conversation that they should have. Just like you didn't pick Toronto to win the East, Gary, right? Or did I hear you did say they win the East? I can't remember.
I did not say they would win the East.
Okay.
He did not.
But it's a conversation.
Don't do that.
We're talking but we're talking about things that should be. These are conversations that teams should be having as far as how do you make your team better to get over the hump. And to your point earlier about Toronto, the East is so wide open. You can't just automatically discard every single team in the East. There's going to be one team that's going to be better than people expect, whether it's a team that you thought was going to be 14th in the East and they wind up in a playing game. That's what we're talking about. So.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's look at one move that was made this week already. We're talking about the big Kevin Durant trade, as I'm sure most people know about at this point. He was sent to Houston in exchange for Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, the number 10 pick in this year's draft, and some 5 second-round picks as well. But who wins this trade, in your opinion?
Oh, Phoenix. Not even close.
Okay.
Not even close. I'm going to tell you why.
You've been trying to debate it.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Phoenix had a player that everybody and their mama, their cousin, their nephew, their cousin Pookie, auntie Nim knew that they had to get rid of. They got players who can actually play. They got draft capital that they can actually use. Now, are these draft picks going to, put them over the top? Probably not. But the fact is, they become sweetener for deals that you can do down the road. And you're rebuilding to begin with. So you're rebuilding with, frankly, players that can help you, young, manageable contracts. And you did this by getting rid of a guy that everybody, again, knew that you had to trade. So to me, the only way that this does not work out for Phoenix is if they screw up all the draft picks and the guys that they acquired play worse than they have their worst season. Because even on an average season for the guys that they acquired, Phoenix is going to be competitive. They're absolutely going to be competitive. So, and as far as Houston's concerned, the benefit for them is that they got a closer now. When the offense stalls, they got a guy that they know they can go and get a bucket from. But how durable is Kevin Durant going to be in Houston? How will he be able to mesh with the guys that they have already? And if you're Ime, who we all know can be a little bit kind of bristly, how's that relationship going?
That's a good question. That is.
Wait,
did they overlap in Brooklyn or no?
Yeah, they did.
They know each other.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
But it's different when you're like one of the assistant coaches and I'm the star, and now you're the head coach and you're dealing with me still. It's very different. So I'm really curious to see how that works. Like, what's going to happen when Kevin has a bad game? Not shooting the ball, but just has a really bad game where shots ain't falling, defense ain't where it need to be, and Ime's asked about that, and Ime go in on him.
Yeah.
How's Kevin going to respond to that? Because you know damn well it's going to happen. There will be that post-game press conference that we're going to be talking about that same week where Ime, and we're going to be Ime, Kevin, drama. Yeah. How is that going to impact this team? Because, and again, those are some of the things I'm pretty sure there was some talk and conversation about before they pulled the trigger. But to me, it's a clear sign as any that Houston is thinking we need to win now. We need to win right now. You don't sign a guy like Kevin Durant and give away the future talents that they did if you don't think that you can win right now. And they believe he's a missing piece. So we'll see. But I feel this was a better deal for Phoenix because of what they were looking to do and what they're looking to achieve, I think is far more achievable after this deal than it was before.
Yeah, thank goodness I'm going to disagree with Sherrod because I think it was I think Phoenix, I give them a C because what you wanted is prospects. And I like Jalen Green. I think he has great potential. He's an athlete. But I would have wanted Cam Whitmore or Reed Shepherd. I'm saying I'm taking two of your guys off your hands. Dylan Brooks is he's a tough guy and he'll do his best in Phoenix, but you got him for his salary. I don't know if you got him for his pure talent. And maybe eventually his toughness and will resonate in Phoenix. But to me, to get the 10th pick, I thought was solid. I would try to get another first-round pick, and I would have tried to get, one of their prospects, a guy who didn't play much this year in Whitmore or Reed Shepherd. That's what I try to do because you want to rebuild in a sense. You want to replenish. You want to make up for the talent gap because now you got Devin Booker and you got Bradley Beal and you got, who else? Like Royce O'Neal, you got Ryan Dunn. Like you got a bunch of guys that are okay, but you don't have anybody that's going to take you to the playoffs or take you, help you win 45, 50 games. You're still a mess with a first-year coach. So I would have gotten some prospects so you could just see guys get young. Green is going to, if they keep him, how does that going to work with Devin Booker and Green in the same backcourt? Both ball-dominant guys. Although Booker has shown the ability to play the point. Do you want him playing the point and Green playing the 2? And then Brooks at the 3. And, I mean, that's a solid team, right? And they had to move on from Kevin. It just didn't work out there. It sounded good when it was on paper, but it didn't work out. But I say both teams. I think Durant at age 37, he'll be 37 in September. Is he a guy who can, he can play your 65 to 70 game? I don't think he's not going to play 82. You measure his minutes as he gets older. You make sure he's got his proper rest and everything. And he's not he's a guy who's going to be about the hoop. And how does that work with Ime? Will he get him to play defense? Will he, like you said, what happens when he has some of those games that aren't typical? But I just think he's still a pure scorer, still can get you buckets. I just think he wants to be part of something that's positive. And if the culture in Houston seems to be going in a positive direction, I think Kevin will be a part of it. If you're trying to get Kevin to help make your culture positive, I think that's too much on his lap, on his shoulders right there. Is okay, Kevin, help us. I mean, become a better culture. But I think he'll be the adult in the room. A lot of those young guys will look up to him and be like, man, I played with you on 2K. Oh, my God, you're Kevin Durant, because there's dudes on there 20, 21 years old. He's 37. They're going to call him Monk and all that. But I think he'll embrace being in a younger environment and being dependent on to get him over to the next level. I don't know if this makes him a championship team, but this makes him a better team because, like Sherrod said, now they do have a closer. And now they can figure out what to do with the rest of the roster.
And I guess, Gary, that's kind of where I come down on this. Does it make them a championship caliber team? Because if you're making this deal, if you're getting rid of the assets that you did, the only step that you should be thinking about going forward, if you're Houston, is to become a champion. And I don't feel this does that. I when I look at the Western Conference, I still see at least 2 or 3 teams that in a best of 7, I feel confident they'll take out Houston even with Kevin Durant. So if that doesn't move the needle to where you need it to be in order for this to feel as though this was a good deal for you, what about the other team involved in the deal, Phoenix? What are they looking to do? They're looking to add a couple of pieces, get some draft capital, and build more and more around Devin Booker. You've got an all-NBA defensive type of player in Dillon Brooks. You've got a guy in Green who there was a point last season where he was a borderline all-star. Someone that was at a minimum was in the conversation. And remember, he was in the conversation in the Western Conference, which is where he's still at. So it's not like he was balling out against, some of the not so great teams in the East. I just think that Phoenix, for what they were looking to accomplish in this deal, came closer to meeting what their goals were than I think Houston will. And obviously time will tell clearly. But if we're looking at what these teams are looking to do on paper, it feels as though Phoenix is a little bit closer to what's on paper, being closer to what their goals are than what Phoenix is looking to do, or excuse me, what Houston is looking to do on paper and what their goals are. That's all.
All right. One more agenda item before we go. The Lakers, reportedly, the Buss family is looking to sell with a $10 billion valuation for the team. Does that make the Celtics deal look like a steal? What does this look like? 2 of the top franchises in the NBA now on the market.
Gary, this LA thing, that's in your hood, Gary. You started something. That's your hood.
Yeah, I think that there was probably a price tag that the Buss family set to sell the team and said, if you meet this, we'll sell. Mark Walter, the Dodgers owner, met it. And, allowed Jeannie Buss to still be one of the governors. So I think it's a win-win situation for the franchise. It's a lot of money when you don't own the arena. They don't own crypto.com. So that's a moneymaker there. So I don't know how, but the Lakers are the Lakers. They're a brand, just like the Celtics are a great brand. But I just think this is where we're at right now. I'm sure Forbes has the Lakers as top 5 franchise in sports in terms of worth, along with the Yankees and the Celtics and, maybe, the Dodgers and other, maybe another NFL team there, the Cowboys. But to me, it puts more money because it's the end of an era because, the family-owned teams are just no longer exist. The Buss's business was basketball. It wasn't anything else. And I think people might have assumed that they had big money because of the Laker owners, but they probably didn't have the wealth that the other corporate owners have. So I think that ends, and the Lakers will probably be able to spend money, and not that they haven't spent money, but be able to really put a lot into the franchise and probably practice facility and things like that to make them a complete first-class organization. So I think this is good for the Lakers as a franchise. And I just think the Buss thing, it kind of started running out, the fights with the family and just, the kind of the unseriousness of the organization with some of the moves and the Bron thing. And it's just like, I think it's for the Lakers, it's time to get down to business. If you want to win championships, then go after it because you're getting passed up. You lost by 5 in 5 games in Minnesota. You lost at Denver last couple. You're not a benchmark franchise in terms of accomplishments at all right now in the Western Conference. Teams are not afraid of the Lakers, and if you're the Lakers, you want to get back to being that team.
Facts.
All right, well, that's all we have for this episode. I mean, we're looking ahead to the draft. We'll see what the Celtics do. Once again, I do want to remind you, if you haven't done so already, to make sure that you're streaming our podcast, obviously liking, sharing with friends, and also just tell a friend about the podcast. That's all we have for this week's episode of the Big 3 NBA Podcast. For Sherrod Blakely and Gary Washburn, I'm Kwani Lunis. This is the Big 3 NBA Podcast.